Hello, everyone. Today I would like to speak about trauma. Trauma, not the psychological explanation of trauma, not to talk about some sort of limited understanding of trauma. I would like to give a spiritual understanding of trauma that we can never see in our books or hear from our psychologists and psychiatrists. This understanding I've got from within, and it took me years to realize that. So on a spiritual level, trauma is so much more than our parental archetypes, because a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists, different people in this field talk about archetypes and how our main archetypes play a role in our bringing and development, which is kind of true and has some valid point in it. But spiritually speaking, it goes further. If we look at the trauma, at any form of betrayal, what is trauma? It's actually the form of betrayal. You got betrayed by your primary caretakers or by parents, by the people you've spiritually chosen to, take care of you. So it's much more fundamental than you think. You think, for example, that you experience spiritual, it's about spiritual trust. It's about the trust to the higher being. So it goes further. It goes much beyond just parenting, because first of all, we have to understand what the parents are. A lot of people emphasize the act of trauma, some sort of a beating, physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, sexual assault, or any other form of abuse which might have taken place. And so again, as we look at spirituality from our limited human, usually bodily perspective, the same way we look at psychology and mental and emotional diseases and all of these sort of imbalances, phenomena. Now, the truth is that if you look deeper, it is never about the physical touch or abuse in this case, because the abuse itself is a touch, it's a transmission, it's a connection to someone's negative or ill intention. So it's a connection with the anger cluster, it's a connection with the cluster of I don't care, indifference, right? It's the connection to the cluster of I want to overpower you because I look at you as a commodity in case of sexual assault. So it is always one way or the other. First of all, the overpowering of someone's will. And second of all, it's the ultimate betrayal, which is not about the physical, again, assault, but which is about the betrayal of the caretaker, that they went there, that they allow this connection with the negative clusters within the collective consciousness to take place. That's why people who were assaulted, abused in any form, constantly have this desire to suicide, kill themselves, hurt themselves, or go into addictions with it, which is another form of slow suicide and killing yourself or killing the flesh, rebelling against the flesh. The flesh always represents mother, the parents, the genetic material. It's that rebellion against that information. Parents are information. We are all information. So when we acquire this physical vehicle, and yet this physical vehicle is not protected or properly cared of by the primary caretakers in whom we entrusted ourselves, we lose connection and trust not only to the caretakers, but to that which those caretakers represent. And the caretakers represent God, the divinity, the higher reality, consciousness, whatever you call it, the higher existence. So the result of trauma is basically the disconnect on the spiritual level, is basically the disconnect from the ultimate, from the higher reality. That's why we feel ourselves forever lost. And no matter how many books we read, how much we educate ourselves, how much information we acquire, how much we try to help others, how much we try to numb our pain and indulge or consume whatever we want or do whatever we want, we cannot breach this gap because we are ultimately lost. The betrayal of a parent is the betrayal of supposedly a higher being. That's where there is the ultimate loss of trust. And that's why when we attempt or want to heal ourselves spiritually and on any other level below, which is mental, emotional, physical, we need, which is actually, this is again a human misconception and division of spiritual and physical realm, where all the this is just always a spiritual realm, because without the spiritual imprint, karmic imprint, this physical body wouldn't come into fruition or into existence. So when we want to heal ourselves, we have to address the core, the reason, and the reason is the spiritual disconnect, which resulted in a complete mistrust to the higher reality. And this mistrust resulted into feeling lost, feeling empty, which again can translate into our human language as depression, as mental imbalance. Also, trauma and constant abuse results in emotional dysregulation, where the parent wasn't actually the parent, and that there's no that inner parent that would further on guide us into adulthood and be able to discern. And again, who is the ultimate parent? The ultimate teacher is that higher consciousness. So when through trauma we disconnect ourselves from this higher reality, we disconnect ourselves from the ability to grow up. And that's where we remain forever children in the grown-up bodies, yet our trauma, our connection to the negative realm through the negative emotions that we experienced in the childhood keeps on draining us, leading to decay and premature death in agony, because we lose our energetic substance, spiritual essence to these negative emotions triggered by the assault, by the abuse. That's why the healing has to always focus on letting go. That's why a lot of religions propagate forgiveness. Forgiveness is nothing but none other than letting go. And letting go is very difficult because it's not just a decision to let go. It's the realization of this phenomenon being no longer important. So all that residue, energetic residue, is dissolved in the space of consciousness and no longer is fed from within. The reason is dissolved, the root is dissolved, the links are severed because of the realization. That's what's so important, to raise awareness. The real healing happens only when your awareness is raised and start kind of diving deeper into the phenomenon. Most of the sick people cannot concentrate. Why? Mentally, emotionally, physically sick people, because their consciousness is dispersed. The consciousness cannot, the sick consciousness cannot dive in, cannot concentrate for long. That's why in later centuries, people foolishly assumed that yoga is about mental concentration. No, it is basically, the concentration is capable of a little bit bringing you to your senses and balancing that mental, emotional, physical disease, but not healing it, because to heal it, you need to address the cause. You need to, first of all, restore the trust. The restoration of trust to the higher power is greatly underestimated and even neglected, because people see the level of parents, major parental archetypes, they don't go beyond that because they have no themselves haven't healed. They have not reconnected with a higher being themselves. So what is the reference point for that healing, high healing? So this is the higher healing. When you reconnect to the higher being, you restore the trust. You restore the trust not in the people, but in the higher being, in your own path, in your own destiny, a part of which each and every being which is in your life are. So at the same time, you also focus within and restore your own energetic boundaries first, so that you can discern and allow only that transmission of energy from the people or elements around you that you choose as balanced and healthy and positively affecting you, or at least bringing you some sort of sense. And if that is not there, you continue gliding along the surface, looking for the solutions in the projected reality. And that desire to be in the projected reality, dispersion through the projected reality, is the traumatic response. It happens after the trauma. Already while we are exiting into this world, it is trauma. Because we witness pain, we witness disconnect from the wholesomeness being, from the wholesome being, from that wholesomeness, blissful, being enveloped in that one. But even that is one thing. That psychological, mental, and emotional disconnect in that kind of a very unhealthy, not a gradual way, but an abrupt, causes us the ultimate disconnect from the higher being. And once you disconnect from the higher being, you are never satiated, you are never fulfilled, you are never complete, you are never content. That's why you start turning away from yourself, from the higher being and alignment that you're supposed to be in, into the physical projected reality, where you start pulling that projected reality into your self, which is empty, which became like a black hole, which constantly is in need of energy supply from the outside. Because when you are connected with the higher self, that's an inexhaustible source of energy, so you never need anything from the outside, or you need only to a very small degree. But once you're disconnected, you start going into an obsessive mode. Again, obsession means lack of energy, which you're trying to compensate naturally by pulling in the matter, the projected matter, into yourself. And yet you're never satiated. That's the age of spiritual vampirism. Spiritual vampirism, because we're all disconnected, and we start vampirizing each other for that energy supply, at least for a short while. That's why everyone vampirizes everyone, everyone traumatizes everyone, everyone tries to manipulate other people's wills, each other's space of consciousness, emotions, understanding of life. And so everyone is a victim of everyone. Everyone is narcissistic towards everyone. Narcissism means you are a child in an adult body, because you have not received that proper parenting so that you could become and shape that parent for yourself and go into adulthood with that higher awareness and discernment and grow yourself from there on. So parents bring parents, the parents are children, and children bring children, and so on and so forth. We wonder why the cases of mental, emotional, sexual abuses are growing day by day. Is because people's traumas are to the brim. They are not addressed. And the solution is so simple. Turn within, reconnect, restore trust, even when your solar plexus yells, I can't. Even when you feel contracted, even when you feel fearful, inhale, exhale, relax. Know it's going to pass. Focus within and trust. Choose to trust. When you choose to trust, your entire system relaxes. Your chest, your solar plexus, your lower abdominal, pelvis area, anus, get relaxed. When you're reconnected with a higher being, you're relaxed. You're blissful. You feel you're nurtured from within. When you're restless, anxious, and codependent on the external reality, you're disconnected from the higher being. And thus you're lost, either temporarily or forever, until you realize this and return yourself, bring it, awaken, or awakening is the same as the restoration of that ultimate link. Bringing yourself back to that ultimate higher reality that is forever nurturing, fulfilling, and eternal. And until we do that, not in a religious way, but in a very conscious way, we cannot heal neither ourselves, nor our beloved ones, nor our society. Until we turn within, prioritize our own well-being, restore that healthy self-love, respect, and physical and energetic boundaries, we cannot heal. The primary point is trust. Even after having been abused, if you look at the victims, they forget the actual abuse. What stays with them is that feeling of being disempowered, or in other words, overpowered by someone else's consciousness, by the evil transmission. And through that act, they are forever resentful to their caretakers or to the circumstances, and actually to the higher being. Why it didn't interfere, why it didn't protect them, why it didn't take care of them. And the answer is because this is the time and the realm and the dimension of the karmic payback. What went around came back around. And so the fact of doing bad ultimately comes back. Whatever we do to others comes back to us, brought us to this down cycle. And so we further disperse through this infliction of trauma and being inflicted ourselves. We cause trauma to others, and it started going as a chain reaction. And we lost eventually our ultimate connection with the higher reality in the form of loss of trust in the flow of life. And so our traumatic response is our worry about the future, is our constant desire to control and hold on to whatever elements that we think define our existence or give us a meaning of life, give us hope. All of that is a traumatic response and has to be healed before we really can open our system to the true awakening, true spiritual revolution and such. Thank you very much. Be blessed and be healed. Like and subscribe.